That's me in the corner. That's me on your screen. I'm giving inspiration. Hey there, and welcome to Font of Inspiration. My name's Chris, and today we'll be talking about one of the words in the name of this channel, and that's inspiration. Specifically, we'll be looking at a narrative variant of inspiration, how that differs from the standard vanilla rules as written version. This is just a quick rundown on how my variant works, and then you can go ahead and grab that for yourself from my Patreon page. It's a free post, so go ahead and grab it. You're losing nothing. But let's start with a look at how inspiration works as written. So, here in the SRD, the 5e SRD, it says that it's a rule the game master can use to reward you for playing your character in a way that's true to his or her, I would use their, personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws, and so on. Right, so it says that you can draw on your personality trait or compassion for the downtrodden, so on, gives a couple of examples, but it kind of leaves it up to the game master in terms of what constitutes actions that are true to your personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Now, there's a difference in terms of how I handle this. It's going to be more focused on complications that come from those four things. We'll get into that a little bit later. Now, how to gain inspiration. According to the SRD, your GM can choose to give you inspiration for a variety of reasons. Typically, it's like I said, when you play out your personality traits, give in to the drawbacks presented by a flaw or bond. Now, these drawbacks are the things that we'll be focusing on in just a minute. And take special note of you either have inspiration or you don't. You can't stockpile multiple inspirations for later use. Now, we're going to break this rule just a little bit in one of the variations of my way of using inspiration. So, how does the SRD say that we can use inspiration? It says if you have inspiration, you can expend it when you make an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. So basically what it is it gives you advantage on that roll. We are going to expand that a little bit, so we're going to add some re-rolling to that, and we are also going to add some story detail to the use of inspiration. So, without wasting any time, let's go ahead and look at narrative inspiration. If you want to find this for yourself, go ahead to my Patreon page. Now, if you hear the word Patreon, you might think, ooh, that's going to cost something, and you absolutely can support the page if you want, but this post is free. So go to patreon.com/font of inspiration. That's all together, no slashes or hyphens or anything of that nature. And what you'll find is the newest post, at least at the time of making this video, new 5e inspiration variant. And if you open that up, you'll find this. And let's go through this variant point by point. So, there are two ways of gaining inspiration, and the GM should choose one before you start the game, or preferably before you even start the campaign. So this is kind of session 0 stuff. Of course, if you introduce this variant mid-game, have a discussion with your players beforehand, see if it fits them, and then choose one of these. So, the first option is a PC gains inspiration when they do something in line with their character's personality traits, ideals, bonds, or flaws. Sounds similar to the SRD. That causes an interesting complication. Now we are focusing on those complications. A complication can either involve the PC having disadvantage on a roll, so voluntarily taking disadvantage on a roll to sort of buy one inspiration, impeded by the complication, or alternatively, the complication may introduce a story detail that hinders the PC or PCs. So some kind of more abstract complication that might, haunt the PCs or end up biting them in the butt later on. With this method, a PC can buy and store a maximum of 2 uses of inspiration at a time. So we are expanding the storing of inspiration from 1 to 2. And there's a reason. And choosing this option, inspiration can be carried over to the next session. So if you have 2 uses of inspiration stored up, you still have those during the next session. The second way of doing this, of gaining inspiration, is that every PC starts each game with inspiration. They just immediately have inspiration. No complications are required. the PCs don't buy inspiration like they would in option 1 or method 1. And with this method, a PC may have a maximum of 1 inspiration at a time. So this goes back to the more vanilla version present in the SRD. Choosing this option, inspiration cannot be carried over to the next session, and that's because every PC starts each game with inspiration. They have one and they can use it during the session, but if they don't, well, they'll have a new one fresh at the next session. And the reason I've limited the number of uses of inspiration within a session to just 1 as opposed to 2 in option 1 is because each PC starts with inspiration already. They don't have to take any complications or disadvantage to gain that. So in option 1, it's a bit of a reward to be able to have 2 instances of inspiration. And option 2 is good for groups where, for instance, you're the game master and you notice that you keep forgetting to award inspiration. I personally constantly forget to give inspiration out. It's just one of those things, I never remember it. So it might help you if every PC just has inspiration right off the bat and it's up to them when they use it. And the fact that they can't store it gives them a reason to use it every session. Now we know how to get inspiration with this variant, but what about using it? I said that we'd be expanding on the uses of inspiration, and here they are. So the first use is the very traditional gain advantage on an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. The second one is to re-roll any single die, including damage dice and dice awarded by class features or racial traits. Think of bardic inspiration or something like that. You must use the new result. So if you fail, or if you get a low result, then that's on you, but you have the option to try to re-roll. The third way of using this inspiration variant is perhaps the most significant in terms of new options, and that's to create a story detail. So let's look at what creating a story detail involves. It's basically using inspiration to create some kind of relatively limited and temporary situational descriptor. So if you think of games like Fate RPG that use aspects, kind of a similar thing. So you come up with an adjective or some kind of descriptor for a situation or a thing. Let's say you decide that there's a lantern in a very critical spot and it's very easy to knock over and start a fire, right? This is something that the others could perhaps use to their advantage. Maybe it helps them escape if there's a raging fire in the room. Now what this requires is that someone has to create the story detail first before someone else can make use of it, so get advantage from it or use it in some more abstract way, some kind of story related way. And then there's wait. Shouldn't PCs always use create a story detail if it can grant multiple PCs advantage? I mean, why would you ever use just the good old gain advantage if you have this option 3? Well, like I said, someone first has to create that story detail, and they can't get advantage from that story detail until they've used their inspiration to create that detail. It's only after that that others can get advantage from it. And players should remember that the story details created should be logical, they should be feasible in that situation, and other PCs gaining some kind of advantage from those situations should be logical as well. And these kinds of story details are usually restricted to a specific location, or they're fairly temporary. For example, the fire might be restricted to one room, or it might go out in a few rounds, that kind of thing. Whereas going for option number 1, which is to just use inspiration to get advantage on these 3 types of rolls, can be used at any point without any narrative justification. So what about re-rolling death saving throws using option 2? That was re-rolling a single die. Now, I understand how a lot of people can find the thrill in that 50-50 shot of either succeeding or failing in a death saving throw, and that being unmodified by anything, including advantage from inspiration. But I would argue that there's a valuable option to be included here by allowing PCs to use inspiration to re-roll a failed death saving throw, because it could be a valuable lethality calibration tool, as I've put it here. What I mean by that is that players who are very invested in their characters just have an extra option in terms of keeping that character alive for a little longer. It's sort of a fail-safe mechanic to ensure that character stays in the running. So that's going to be it for this video. Go ahead and grab that narrative inspiration variant from my Patreon page. Remember, it's free, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day and stay inspired.